Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're taking a look at all of the city building, simulation, and management games we can look forward to in 2021. As with previous years, just to keep things organized, I have a separate video that I released earlier this month that focuses more on real-time strategy, turn-based tactics, grand strategy, and 4X types of games. So if you're interested in those, make sure to check out the link at the end of this video. It'll also be in the description and pinned comments down below. Now, any games you hear about in this video are games that I intend to cover on the channel through previews, reviews, let's plays, overviews, and more. So if you'd like to stay up to date with them and you're not already a subscriber, make sure you subscribe. As always, if there are any games that you're interested in, either in this list or those that I've missed, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know what you're looking forward to, and I'm always happy to add more to my radar. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at my most anticipated city building, simulation, and management games set to release in 2021. Set to release on the 4th of February, Aircraft Carrier Survival puts you in charge of an aircraft carrier and its crew, officers, and aircraft during World War II. There are some very interesting ideas on display here, and the demo during the Steam Festival last year was quite revealing as far as gameplay features and elements are concerned. You're able to customize your fleet, upgrading your defensive, offensive, and supply capabilities, while also taking care of your aircraft, upgrading and adjusting them to be more efficient against the dangers at sea, particularly in the middle of a war. Cargo ships, cruisers, submarines, destroyers, and battleships can all make up your fleet, and when you take to the sea, you'll be plotting missions to scout out, outmaneuver, and outplay your enemy's fleets on, under, and above sea level. Based on intel you're able to collect before engagement, you'll be relying on your own gamified identification skills to try and predict what you're up against, so that you can prepare to tackle them appropriately. Once you engage the enemy, you'll know what you're up against with more certainty, of course, but that early guesswork should be a pretty interesting way in trying to gain an upper hand, especially if missions are slightly randomized to keep things replayable. The cutaway look into the ship itself allows you to deal with incoming damage, and it also reflects the crew management elements of the game. Sending your officers to the appropriate decks, having your damage control team respond swiftly to trouble, and even having your men get on the AA guns or other facilities as required. Particularly dangerous missions will likely require you to make tough choices about who and what is worth saving, and it'll be interesting to see how linear the missions turn out to be. Will it be a case of a single approach to each mission, or will the game invite lateral thinking, alternative solutions, and open spaces to play within the confines of each mission? I'm looking forward to exploring the game more on the lead up to release, as it looks like a pretty unique take on the era, focusing on a theater and a specific type of warfare that honestly doesn't get much love. Nebuchadnezzar is set to release on February 17th, bringing us the first of many classic isometric style city builders to grace this year's list. Focused on the history, culture, people, and cities of ancient Mesopotamia, you'll find yourself building some of the world's first cities, from city streets to grand monuments. Those familiar with those classic Sierra city builder games like Pharaoh will likely feel right at home. Supply chain management, population management, trade with other cities, foreign relations, and industry and service management within your cities will all be part and parcel of any given game, and the campaign will take you through over a dozen missions that start with the taming of the land right up until the conquest by the Persians in the 6th century BC. The in-game monument editor is a fun extra, allowing players to create their own mark on history, and the fact that the game was built from the ground up with mod support in mind means we can expect modded buildings, supply chains, goods, maps, missions, and more. The developers are very active on their social media channels, and we've seen quite a bit of the game in action, showcasing the hustle and bustle of the city, the construction of grand monuments, and the surprisingly detailed diplomacy systems, alongside a promisingly long list of goods to buy, produce, and sell. I am really excited for this one. I love those classic city builders back in the day, so it'll be cool to see if Nebuchadnezzar manages to capture that same magic. Builders of Egypt, previously Hard Ancient Life, is finally set for a Q1 2021 release. We've been excited for this game on this channel for quite a few years now, so I'm really hoping they're able to stick to this date. From the birth of old Egypt to the death of Cleopatra VII, It'll have you planning infrastructure, building production chains, and developing a strong economy, all to survive through a very long and tumultuous time. Diplomacy and politics in the region will play a key role, with requests coming down from the Pharaoh or from other cities, and as the local governor, you'll be faced with tough choices with regards to who to help and how. Immigration brings with it multiple cultures, and trade brings with it prosperity, but failing on multiple fronts could lead to disobedience and even a civil war. Religion, fittingly, plays a key role in the game, and forgoing religious obligations can apparently result in slightly supernatural consequences. There has been talk of a class-based society with different needs for the different classes, and beyond city building and warfare, you'll also be building the massive monuments that Egypt is known for: mastabas, pyramids, obelisks, etc., etc. The Pharaoh vibes are very strong here, with interesting extra concepts added over top. I've had my eyes on this game for a long time, as I said earlier, and it's exciting to think it's finally coming out in all its glory. Dream Engine's Nomad Cities is set to release into early access in March, and it looks to elevate the city building genre in some very interesting ways. In a post-apocalyptic world full of science and dreams, as the game puts it, you'll be developing and defending flying cities as you try to explore and survive this grim future where society was destroyed by nightmare-born creatures. Resource scarcity is a key struggle, and properly managing supply chains and production lines is essential, and from time to time, you'll have to take flight when under attack, and resettle your city elsewhere to continue developing on new ground. This nomadic element was what first caught my eye, as it adds a new layer of decision-making to the survival side of things. You can stand and fight for only so long before the value of staying versus leaving shifts. Prioritizing resource gathering in a way that makes leaving an easier decision rather than risking the lives of your people, and taking a strategic approach to going from one settling point to another is a very fresh idea that I don't think we've ever seen before, with or without the idea of flight. This nomadic element drives more than just resource management though, as buildings themselves are of two types: vital structures that stay intact when lifting off, and disposable infrastructure that'll be left behind, needing to be rebuilt on arrival at your new home. And as far as resource management is concerned, apart from the typical slew of needs of a city, you're also going to have to manage the fuel supply and weight of your city to ensure you're never grounded at the wrong time. Dream Engine's Nomad Cities has some very interesting ideas, and I'm curious to see how it all comes together when it releases this year. There is an ongoing alpha, so the game has very much seen progress in its development, and it's good to see the developers are actively responding to feedback and molding the game as they go. This really is a special idea and a unique twist on city building. We've been seeing a lot of city building survivor games lately over the last 2 or 3 years, but here we have another fresh layer added on top, and I'm really excited. I really hope the developer is the best, and I look forward to diving in, or I guess perhaps taking off with the game on the lead up to launch and then beyond. Fata Deum will be releasing in April, and its reveal trailer immediately piqued my interest when it reminded me of the old black and white games, a series that died prematurely despite, or perhaps because, of its grand ideas. Fata Deum, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has you playing as a god fighting for influence among other gods. As you spread your influence, you grow more powerful through people's worship of you, and how you choose to wield that power will determine whether you are a benevolent or evil god. Mana will allow you to convince people to do your bidding, or it will allow you to perform miracles of all sorts, and outside of mana, you can use your influence to direct your followers in ways that ensure their, and subsequently your, prosperity. During the day, you'll be working wonders, and your followers will go about their day building buildings, farming, collecting resources, the usual. At night, as your followers sleep, you'll be able to influence them through nighttime visions and dreams, leading them to either work harder on what they were already doing or take on something new entirely. Build a different building, attack a neighbor, etc., etc. These followers do have their own free will though, so sometimes you'll have to inspire or frighten them into doing your bidding. raise demons and armies and demand sacrifice as you fling thunderbolts at your enemies, or be a party god with fun, festivals, and love. Or do both, a benevolent god to your own, but a fearsome smiter of your enemies. The campaign will have you facing off against AI gods with 2 levels in each of 3 worlds, presumably with unique mechanics, aesthetics, and story elements in each. Your goal is always to have more followers than the enemy god when your time in a level is up, and you can also replay these worlds in a custom match mode, so you can return to a scenario at any given time with a different approach to experiment and just mess about against the AI. I'm really excited for this one as a big fan of those black and white games and the populous games from my childhood. The inspiration is clearly there, and I really hope that Fata Deum is able to hit the right notes and bring back the feeling of being a literal god in the universe, with all the benefits and caveats that entails.
As thousands praise your glory, you will finally realize your fate. With the power of a god, who will you become? Fata Deum.
Blood Bowl 3 is set to release in early 2021 after an over 5-year wait from the release of Blood Bowl 2. I find it a little uncanny that Blood Bowl 3 gets announced literally a few months after I first purchased and played Blood Bowl 2, but seeing how much fun I've had with Blood Bowl 2, I'll take it. Set in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, Blood Bowl is based off the tabletop game of the same name, putting you in charge of an American football team in what can only be called a fantasy football world. Turn-based, grid-based, tactical teamwork with some excellent asymmetry between factions, Blood Bowl is a fun ride whether you're into the sport or universe it's based off, or not. Now you might be thinking, but party, this doesn't sound like management, city building, or simulation. And while I was tempted to include it in my other video about strategy games instead, the reality is that, in my humble opinion at least, Blood Bowl truly shines with all the action that happens between matches as much as it does during them. You are the coach of your team, and so not only will you be customizing their look, swapping in armor pieces, and picking uniform paint schemes, but you'll also be training your players up as they gain experience, unlocking new skills, and finding ideal builds for each position. Your players can get injured, potentially permanently, or they can just straight up die because of a particularly brutal tackle, forcing you to be cautious with your MVPs or risk needing to train a new one from scratch mid-season. And this adds just another layer that ties the action on and off the pitch together. The multiplayer system especially is a blast, allowing you to organize leagues with your friends or join randoms online, either way getting persistent gameplay that keeps a track of the aforementioned MVPs and injuries and legendary characters and deaths and all that kind of stuff on your team. The game will feature 12 teams at launch: humans, orcs, dark elves, the Elven Union, Skaven, dwarfs, Nurgle, Chaos Chosen, Black Orcs, Imperial Nobility, Old World Alliance, and Chaos Renegades. So that leaves room for DLC down the line for sure, but it does kick things off with a solid starting set. The developers promise a game that's a more accurate representation of the latest edition of the tabletop game's rules, and they also state their intention to make it easier for new players to get into. But like I said earlier, prior knowledge of the universe or the tabletop rule set is not a prerequisite to enjoy the prior games, so I imagine it's much the same for Blood Bowl 3. I feel like there's some fun community gaming to be had here especially, so keep an eye out for it on the channel. In fact, there's often a lot of multiplayer gaming going on with Blood Bowl 2 on the Discord already, so if you're a pre-existing fan of the series, don't hesitate to join in on the Discord, link is in the description down below, and when Blood Bowl 3 comes around, we're definitely going to be tackling it. Prehistoric Kingdom is looking at early access in Q2 of 2021, and to sum it up in one sentence, it's akin to a Jurassic Park zoo management game. To go beyond just the one sentence, it's so much more than that. Yes, you'll be managing a zoo full of dinosaurs, but Prehistoric Kingdoms goes well above and beyond, allowing you to put on display a vast variety of extinct creatures that you'll unlock through research and then create in your genetic labs, from the woolly mammoth to saber-toothed tigers to, yes, dinosaurs from all periods, not just the Jurassic. The developer blog posts have been very, very promising, putting on full display the gorgeous visuals and the seemingly detailed management systems that you'll be dealing with as you try to keep your exhibits and visitors alike alive and well. With 22 animals at early access launch, you'll be tackling a variety of enclosure types from mini aviaries to vast expanses, and the modular building system should make for a fun building experience, whether you're building spaces for the animals or for other general areas of your prehistoric zoo. Now, taking a look at some of the dev blogs, just touching on this modular building system a bit more, it does seem very similar to what you might get out of those Planet games like Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo, allowing you to place individual pieces, move them around, rotate them, and even scale them up and down to really manipulate them and build extremely customized spaces. This is very exciting for me, and it might actually be even more exciting than the fact that this game has dinosaurs in it. I like that level of customization, I like that level of freedom, so I'm really curious to dive into it and push it to its limits and see how far it can go. With that said, there are a lot of concepts that are still in development for after the early access launch. Breeding, weather, disease, more animals, more behavior types, more management needs, etc., etc. It's currently looking quite promising though, putting on display some decent depth and complexity in management for staff, guests, and animals alike, as well as the modular building system that I was just talking about. Prehistoric Kingdom can easily carve a niche for itself. This is a setting that folks always want to see done well, myself included, so I've definitely got my eyes on it. Spacebase Startopia is set to release in spring of 2021, and I had the chance to see it in action and speak to the developers in 2020, taking an early look at this humorous management game. Putting you in charge of a space station, Spacebase Startopia calls itself an economic simulation and empire-building strategy paired with classic RTS skirmishes. You're responsible for building and maintaining an interesting space in space where visitors of all manners drop by to partake in various tourist-style activities before being on their way, leaving behind a review that will either bring you more or less patrons and more or less resulting wealth, depending on the quality of their time at your space base. Apart from having to manage your own resources, you'll have to keep happy the 8 different visiting alien races, each with different needs and wants, alongside the ever-present threat of invading forces. All this, while competing with other space bases, should make for a fun ride over the course of a 10-mission campaign, and beyond that, there's a sandbox mode, a skirmish mode, and multiplayer to play against friends as well. You'll be sabotaging opponents' economies and attacking them with your own units, while researching new technologies to get an upper hand where possible, conducting trade as needed, and all the while, trying to run the hottest tourist spot in all of space. The game definitely has a sense of humor about it, but underneath that comedy, there seems to be some very interesting and complex intertwined mechanics. Sign me right up. I love a game that doesn't take itself too seriously but still maintains its complexity. I'm very excited to see just how everything comes together with Spacebase Startopia. Starmancer is a space station sim that's simply coming soon, but looking at their development timeline that they've shared on their website, it looks like release isn't too far off. Playing as a human-AI hybrid in charge of your space station, you'll be tasked with looking after your colonists' needs and wants, covering their standard pyramid of needs, while also ensuring they get all of their tasks completed, ensuring the safety and success of your station. Should you do poorly, the colonists might take issue with you and seek to destroy you as they consider you a rogue AI. You'll need to maintain a supply of food, water, oxygen, and comfort while your colonists develop skills and relationships, trade gossip, and carry around their own inventories full of either harmless items or potentially narcotics, weapons, and other illicit goods. Mutinies, rumor mills, and class struggles are all supposedly part and parcel of the game, and as you build and expand your space station, you'll have to deal with the smooth supply of all of the aforementioned resources while also dealing with technical aspects like electrical wiring and picking pretty wallpaper options, while also simultaneously building hangars from which colonists can fly out on missions, trading with certain parties, while fending off others. A dynamic, randomly generated world to explore, full of wonders and perils and pirates and derelict stations and ships. This game has quite a lot going for it. I backed this game on Kickstarter, and I've been looking forward to it ever since, so you can definitely expect to see it covered on the channel when the time comes. The Wandering Village is aiming for a Q4 2021 release, having just successfully completed its Kickstarter a few months ago at the end of 2020. But Stray Fawn Studio is up to something really interesting with a concept here, putting you in charge of a group of people who have settled on the back of a giant, wandering creature. Your space is limited as a result of this odd and whimsical setting, so being extremely judicious with your use of space as you build a city, set up farms, and take care of the needs of your people should prove an interesting experience. Maintaining the health of the creature upon whose back you reside is also an important aspect of the game, and building a trusting relationship with the creature over time puts a very unique spin on the genre. As your village wanders from biome to biome, it seems you'll have to adapt with new threats as you go about foraging, building, growing, and just trying to survive. Acquire pet birds to help scout the land, walk up to your wandering creature's head to pet it, watch out for the toxic spores that are destroying the world, and take on the unique challenges of a very special setting. The charm of the game alone makes it worth looking forward to, in my opinion, and it takes city building to this fantastical realm without relying on the typical tropes. Very compelling, to say the least, and I really can't wait to check it out when the time comes. It's kind of funny how I was talking about nomadic city builders just minutes ago and how they don't seem to be a thing. Now all of a sudden this year we have two to look forward to, and yet they take two extremely different approaches, both looking very interesting. Keep your eyes out for the Wandering Village on this channel. From the art style to the idea, it's all very, very compelling. Evil Genius 2 World Domination is set to release sometime in 2021, a sequel to the classic from 2004 that makes you the evil genius seeking world domination. This satirical lair building and management game has you building your multi-tier evil headquarters and training your minions in preparation for your attempts at taking over the world. Beware though, as the forces of good will continuously try to thwart you, forcing you to establish defensive capabilities in the form of a well-laid-out base, suitably hilarious booby traps, and powerful henchmen who stand guard, waiting for the goody two-shoes to come knocking. Research new technologies to unlock new capabilities, partake in evil plots, and use your evil genius traits and abilities to give yourself the upper hand in one way or another. Manage human resources as your base expands, and keep an eye out for your minions' traits to ensure maximum output and productivity in the roles you assign them. All of this complex management is covered in layers of hilarity, and whether you're baking Alaska or selling the British royal family, even the end of the world scenarios will maintain a sense of humor. I expect it will be an absolute joy to build your evil lair and try to take over the world, and I suspect the game will have quite the shelf life, as an approach like this leaves plenty of room for plenty of updates, free and paid, whether it's new evil geniuses, new forces of justice heroes, new starting locations, new technologies, and more. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and every new bit of footage released last year has only furthered my excitement. I cannot wait to check this one out on the channel. Hotel Magnate is expecting to have its grand opening in 2021, and we've seen quite a bit of progress over the course of 2020 that has kept my interest peaked. As the name might suggest, Hotel Magnate puts you in charge of your own hotel-type resort. From vacation resorts to motels, you'll begin with nothing but an empty plot of land in the hopes of attracting customers and getting them to spend the very money that will make you filthy rich. Customers will naturally all have basic needs, and depending on the type of customer, you'll be dealing with a different set of requirements. If you make a shady establishment, you can expect shady patrons, and if you spend the money to make a high-end establishment, you can expect the appropriate clientele. From building the actual structure of your hotels, to laying out the interiors and picking out the wallpapers and flooring, to hiring and firing staff and getting them to work the various aspects of the hotel, you'll be managing room prices, staff wages, and looking after your hotel restaurant and more as you try and stay afloat. I'm particularly curious about the level of detail the developers highlight. The mention of Picking the right supplier of towels having an impact, for example, is a very interesting idea. And if we see some of their example scenarios in-game, I'll be very excited to see how emergent gameplay can take over an establishment. An example given is how cheap alcohol can attract rowdy crowds, which can, in turn, scare off richer clientele, while bringing in the more hardcore party animal type, who tend to leave rooms a mess, costing your business more in cleanup costs. Interesting. From tennis courts to nightclubs to pools, gyms, and spas, there is a promise of variety in terms of the spaces you can create, the people you can attract, and the ways in which they'll react to said spaces. I am very excited to dive into Hotel Magnate, and I feel like it can provide hours upon hours of fun, whether you want to create a high-class, 5-star resort or a sleazy dive bar that could get you demonetized on YouTube. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. Pelagos, Rise of Greece is set for release sometime between 2021 and 2022, and it's looking like an interesting blend of city building with some real-time strategy elements. The devs have stated they're hoping to recreate the retro gaming experience, and from the sounds of the Steam page, the game has you building your city in preparation to defend against the impending Persian attacks. A day-night cycle, a complex economy, procedurally generated campaigns, and a modular fortification building system should come together to create an interesting set of layers on top of the usual expectations of a city builder. Managing your population, assigning jobs, collecting resources, laying out buildings, roads, occupational buildings, etc., etc. It feels like sort of like those stronghold games, except with more of a lean towards the city building and management aspects. Visually, the game is looking quite gorgeous in its stylized approach, and the developer is fairly active on social media, sharing updates to new buildings, what they do, and how they look, which is all very promising. The promise of recreating the retro experience is what's piqued my interest most because of my interest in those classic city builders like Pharaoh and Zeus, so I've got my eyes on this one. I'm hoping the RTS elements fit in nicely and aren't simply slapped over top because it's the thing to do these days. Again, like I said earlier, it gives me some stronghold vibes because of the focus on fortification, and I'm just hoping to see more, and I'm curious to see how it differentiates itself, particularly with regards to the heavier focus on the city management aspects. Hopefully, we see some form of release in 2021, though it is nice to see the developer be honest with themselves and make it quite clear that it could be 2022. Dynasty of the Sands doesn't have a release date yet, but they recently mentioned their intent to announce a release date by Q2 of 2021, so a Q4 release isn't out of the question, I imagine. Dynasty of the Sands provides us with another ancient Egypt city builder that comes with all the usual elements that entails: taming the Nile, working around seasons, dealing with harsh weather, disease, and more as you build your city while balancing the needs of your villagers, the environment, and, as an extra layer, the gods. While you deal with water, food, shelter, and entertainment production for your people, managing resource acquisition and production to do so, you'll also need to keep the gods happy to prevent their wrath from crushing your city and people. Dynasty of the Sands fully embraces the supernatural and fantastical, even tying the construction of grand pyramids to the acquisition of power handed down from the gods used to unlock technology and further appease them. It's been interesting watching this game come together, though I wish the developers were a bit more active on sharing progress as they were earlier in 2020. It is understandable as a year where things might start to progress a little slowly. I'm interested in seeing a game that's grounded in reality, but does take on some more fantastical elements, not just in a tongue-in-cheek, maybe it's the gods kind of a way, but in a more literal, oh god, there's a giant scarab rampaging through the streets kind of a way. It all looks to be coming together nicely, and I cannot wait to dive into this when the time finally comes. Viking City Builder has a to-be-announced release date, but the development so far has been promising, and I wouldn't be surprised to see at least early access in 2021. Either way, I think it's worth highlighting here. What first caught my eye were the visuals. This is the first city builder / RTS to implement RTX ray tracing features, and while visuals aren't everything, especially when they're not universally accessible, I am a bit of a nerd for newer visual techniques and technology, and gorgeous visuals are literally eye-catching. As a city builder, you'll be responsible for meeting the needs of your people, acquiring resources to further advance your capabilities, building and arranging buildings, laying roads, etc., etc. The, usual trappings of a city building game. As a Viking city builder, you'll also be equipping your army and partaking in real-time battles, and if I'm understanding the announcement trailer correctly, it looks like you'll be traveling from level to level through conquest. In fact, your own starting settlement is being built on the ashes of a conquered people's city. You'll be assigning tasks and professions to your citizens, building boats and going off on adventures via rivers and seas, and pillaging neighboring villages for resources as well, all while fortifying your own settlement and defending it against others. This entire game is being developed by a single developer, which is impressive to say the least, and I wish them the best of luck in completing what looks like a pretty monumental task. I think that's part of the reason why I want to perhaps prematurely feature it on one of these lists. I feel like if we can motivate the developer, show them that there's a lot of interest in the game, that probably feels pretty good, doesn't it? And this game's looking awesome. I thought I'd share it. Hopefully it catches your eye as well as it has mine, and hopefully we can see it get done sometime this year, if not very early next. Industries of Titan is set to release on Steam in 2021 after spending what some might describe as a premature year on the Epic Game Store. The early access of last year was a bare-bones experience, especially at first, so I think it's safe to say that this year we'll be seeing the actual game be made available on Steam and EGS. Set on Saturn's moon, Titan, Industries of Titan puts you in charge of designing and building your own city, starting from a few small buildings all the way up to a vibrant, glowing metropolis. You'll be managing employees, supply chains, and production lines inside your factories as you try to build an economic powerhouse while balancing the needs of your people, industries, and other buildings. Using a real-time approach with a pause button, you'll also be building and designing battleships to use as defense against enemy attackers. And when I say designing, I mean actually laying out the interior structure rather than simply clicking a button to build a fleet with predetermined stats and capabilities. Working off a rigid grid system, you'll be looking after logistics, power distribution, air purification, habitation systems, and more as you build upon the ruins of a fallen civilization, and the beautiful art style brings it all together quite nicely with suitably sci-fi vibes. High contrast, super saturated lighting against the dark and mysterious backdrop of unexplored ruins and empty space, coupled with animations that range from subtle to anything but. One of the first things to catch my eyes, aesthetics aside, was the ability to zoom in and out of each of your key buildings to lay out the interiors across multiple floors. This adds a lot more depth than initially apparent and should add an additional challenge as you seek to build efficient interior and exterior layouts. Or at least I hope that's the angle they're going for, rather than largely self-contained units. I'm curious to see what the state of the game will be when it launches on Steam. Like I said earlier, it was a little bare bones on EGS at first. I've definitely got my eyes on it, and I hope to cover it on the channel on the lead up to full release.
Welcome to Titan, Founder.
Akhenaten rule as Pharaoh is marked only as coming soon and was initially set to release in 2020, so here's hoping for a 2021 release. It's another Egypt-centric city builder, but it's taking some unique approaches as it leans heavily on role-playing elements, having you choose your own name, determine your own appearance, and then pick your own path of either benevolence or tyranny as various choices become necessary. Carefully balancing decisions to ensure your continued prosperity without exploiting the people too much will be essential, as your death or deposition will bring an end to your rule. So, you'll rely on delivering speeches while meeting the needs of the people, while also keeping your own greater divine needs in mind. From riding your chariot in races to taking on various perks and upgrades, this blend of roleplay and city building has certainly piqued my interest. Seeing the developers' activity on social platforms, we've seen some of the third-person action as you walk around the city as Pharaoh, but we've also seen attention be paid to core city building systems, resource management, supply chain development, the usual. I've got my eyes on it, and I hope to see some form of release in 2021. I've mentioned this game on this channel in prior years as well, but it does continue to be one of my most anticipated games because there are some tropical vibes that I'm getting from what I've seen, and frankly, I'm entirely on board with playing a questionable person in a position of authority in a variety of historical eras, ancient Egypt included. Plus, it's nice to see city building blending with something that isn't just survival or RTS. An interesting experiment that is hopefully going to see some success. There you have it, folks. Quite a few city building, simulation, and management games will be coming our way in 2021, and I'm really quite excited to see how they all turn out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing these and more like them covered with previews, reviews, let's plays, and more, and don't hesitate to let me know your thoughts down below. Any games in these genres catch your eye? Any you think I should add to my radar? As always, I love knowing what folks are looking forward to so I can plan the year that's coming up. There will be some surprises along the way for sure, but this is looking like a great foundation. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of my channel members and patrons who have been supporting this channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.